It kind of goes hand in hand with the opportunities and the successes of the human rights field in the last 20 years. The human rights field has grown exponentially in the last 20 years, and awareness of human rights has grown significantly. But at the same time, the governments are also learning how to repress citizens at the same time even more. And they're learning how to react to the growth of the human rights field. So we're seeing a lot of human rights activists that are being attacked, a lot of regulations around the development of civil society within countries, and that's having an impact on our field of human rights philanthropy as well, just getting money into certain countries. And just in the last year, new regulations, for example, in Russia and India on receiving foreign funding. And that's going to have a significant impact on the human rights activists that are working in those countries. And after seeing a significant growth in human rights and civil society, we're seeing how countries are countering that. And a lot of attention is being paid now to the support and the safety of human rights defenders that are also being attacked in their countries. One of the big challenges is that we're looking at structural change in the long term, and so it's hard to figure out how we're going to measure these long-term changes in our day-to-day work. So it's definitely something that we need to do better at and do more of. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that funders are getting better at telling their story, and human rights organizations are getting better at telling their story. And in our research report that is coming out, we have case studies where we are sharing grant-making wins. And that is something that we're going to have to use more of, and that's where we'll get to the next opportunity of building an active constituency for human rights, is getting that message out of the impact of human rights organizations and funders and all that we could do working together. I'm sort of a glass half full type of person, because many will see this as a challenge, but I think it's a real opportunity right now for us to look at messaging for human rights. And at one point where that became very clear to me was at a reception. It was not a human rights reception, where I met someone. We were talking about what we do, and I said, I work in human rights, and she said, is that like human resources? And to me, that was the light bulb that we are doing something wrong, and this is really an area where we have an opportunity and really need to jump on crafting a message that is relevant to everyone's day-to-day lives, and one that is compelling and coherent and relevant and really speaks to people. Another opportunity we're seeing is a growth of philanthropy in other countries around the world, and it's not robust enough, and I think there's an opportunity for us to help build philanthropy in other countries, in local contexts, at the national and regional levels, and it's when we talk about potential new sources of funding, we're thinking about high net worth individuals, new tech companies, a growth in companies that want to support social justice, but also in philanthropy around the world, and the opportunity to build philanthropy around the world and foundations around the world. So it's another big opportunity. So when we started this research, we're an affinity group with about 350 foundation members, and we were working initially with the idea that we would get the research from these member institutions. And we decided a little bit into the process that we're going to look at a much broader, take a much broader view and look at all foundations that we had data on, that the Foundation Center had data on, and some related funding networks had data on, or we would get. And when we put it all together, it came out to 703 foundations. And you know, that only a couple hundred of those are active members of Human Rights Funders Network. So there are many hundreds more that don't necessarily even characterize themselves as human rights funders, but that fell into the research. And what's really exciting is how we will be able to take that information and really develop the discourse on human rights, really think about how we can broaden the field with all of these other funders that fell into the research. There are many more high net worth individuals around the world who are thinking about their responsibility to be a part of social justice, social change, access to health and education, and it's a big opportunity for human rights funders moving forward, is working with these many new players. And one of the examples that we came across in doing our research was that in 2010, when we were gathering data on human rights funding, we found that there was approximately $15 million that was going to human trafficking. And as we were pulling this data together, we received the information that in 2011, Google gave grants to human trafficking at about $11 million. So they, in 1 year, were almost doubling the amount of money going to human trafficking. And this is a whole new arena for us, new players, and really an important opportunity for the human rights field to think about how they can influence corporations, new family foundations, individuals who are really interested in becoming involved. It's really a time for us to think about breaking down the silos, and it speaks a little bit to our research, where we have a couple hundred funders who are very invested in human rights, and many hundreds more that fund within the human rights arena but don't call themselves human rights funders, and that really revealed to us the great opportunity in breaking down silos and increasing the dialogue between funding sectors, funders that fund on health issues or education issues, that can link up with education rights funders and health rights funders, and there's development funders that really work on economic justice issues just as human rights funders do. So there's a huge opportunity to increase the dialogue and collaboration across sectors. But there's also a lot of room for improvement on collaboration amongst the funders that fund in human rights now. That will always be there, but we'd love to see more of that. And then there's the role of the human rights funder as an advocate and maybe a proselytizer for human rights funding, because as I mentioned before, there are so many new potential actors, potential funders for human rights, many new foundations that would love to hear about how funders have used the human rights framework and how it's worked for them, and who are interested in social justice issues. So within our world of human rights funders, we'd love to see human rights funders being out there and helping to bring in more funds with these new potential donors. And they can be an advocate for their grantees as well to bring in more funding.